Start recording. Yeah. Okay. So in today's session, in our last session, we have seen this dimension usage tab, and we have just seen the different kind of relationship that a fact and dimension table have within the SSAS queue. Okay. And after that, we have also just seen this calculation tab, that if you want to define some calculation, okay, uh, or we create some kind of calculated measures, then how we can create it, that I have just explained you. Okay. In today's session, I'm just going to go to this tab partition, perspective, translation. Okay. And after that, we will be looking at storage modes, that what are the kind of different storage modes that are available within your SSAS queue. Okay. So those are the topics which I'm just planning to cover in today's session. Okay. So first I will just start uh, uh, with easy topics like a perspective. Okay. So perspective is nothing but the user-defined views. Okay. So like in our SQL server, we have we define a view. Okay. So what this view is, that on the top of the table structure that we have, okay, on the top of that table structure, we create certain definition to retrieve columns from our database tables. Okay. So those kind of user defined view, or just to get a data whatever we want. Okay. We just create certain views. Okay. And we just use it within our SQL query. Here in the cube also, there are a similar kind of concept is available. Okay. That for example, if you are creating a cube, okay, then there are chances that that cube will contain a data for a multiple department. Okay. So cube may contain a data for your sales department, for your finance department, for your HR department, for your marketing department. So your cube might contain a data for all those different sections. Okay. Now, a data for a sales department doesn't make a much sense to HR department, or HR department data doesn't make any sense to a marketing department, and so kind of things can happen. Okay. So in certain cases, what you want to do is you just want to make sure that whatever data is applicable to a sales department, they're only able to see that data. Okay. Or whatever data is or whatever data is applicable to your concern, this marketing department. Okay. They're only able to see that particular kind of data. Okay. So if those kind of view you want to define over here within your SSAS queue, okay, in that case what you can do is you can just create you can just use this perspective option that is available over here. Okay. Like here I have just opened the solution, okay, that will contain the AdventureWorks like entire cube. Okay. So in this cube they have used all the tables that are related to your AdventureWorks data warehouse. So here you will get a list of all the dimensions and fact table. Okay. So here what they have did is they have created the different perspective. Like for example, they have created one perspective over here with a direct sales. Okay. Now against this perspective, you can just see that they have selected only a certain columns or certain attributes. Okay. So here from your measures list, they have selected a certain measures from this place. Okay. Whichever makes sense to the people whoever belong to this direct sales group. Okay. So those kind of selection you can just see over here. Similarly, for the dimensions perspective, they are not displaying a data for all the dimension. Okay. But they are just selecting a few dimension which may make any sense to the business user. Okay. So here you can just see that they have selected the dimension like date, ship date, delivery date, customer. As the reseller doesn't make any sense to the direct sales, okay, they have not selected the reseller dimension over here, or geography dimension over here, or an employee dimension over here. So whenever I'm just going to process this cube, okay, and after that if I'm going to browse this cube, I'm just going to get an option that what kind of view I want to view. Okay. I only want to view I want to see the entire cube data. Okay. Or I want to select the data that is particular to my direct sales channel, or channel sales, or sales summary, or finance, or something like that. Okay. So whenever your end user will try to connect to this particular queue, like this particular cube I have developed and I have just deployed on my local machine. Okay. So now if I just try to analyze this data into an Excel, okay, this particular cube, okay, it is just going to ask me that what kind of perspective I want to use, okay. So whatever data is selected over here against this perspective, okay, only that data will be visible to the end user, so he can basically browse his data easily. Okay, now conceptually this thing is clear to everyone that what perspective is and in which are the scenarios in which it can be used for. Anyone has any questions on that part? If you have, please go ahead. Otherwise I will just show you its implementation, okay, and the scenarios like how we just browse the data once we create the perspective. Conceptually, any question on the perspective? Okay, so I believe everyone is fine with that. Okay, so here we have this AdventureWorks cube. Okay, and let's say from this particular cube, if I want to retrieve a data, okay, so I'll just open it in browse mode. Okay, and whenever I'm just going to click to analyze this data in Excel, okay, I'm just going to see this option over here. Okay, that which particular perspective I want to use. Okay, so I want to use the AdventureWorks. Okay, so that is my entire cube. So when I select this option and I will take a data, okay, all the dimensions and fact table will be accessible to me in an Excel file for an analysis purpose. Okay, or if I select this option direct sales, only the details which I have selected over here in this particular perspective design, the few particular measure groups or few particular dimensions that I have selected over here, that only visible to me in my Excel file. Okay, so based on that selection only, the data will be visible to me. Okay, and I will be able to do its analysis. Okay, so for example,
Actually,
let's yes.
sorry, just one small question. You performed some work to do that, all this list? Because we don't see on our project.
Yeah, this is this thing actually exists in our AdventureWorks data warehouse project. The AdventureWorks data warehouse project, a sample project which I have provided to you. This is not the one which we are building. This is not the one which we are
So
building.
we don't have this.
Yeah, we don't have this. So if you just go to this particular folder over here in this OneDrive, okay. So in the last session, I have asked all of you to have this solution with you. This particular
Yes,
solution. Yep,
yes.
yep, yep.
On that solution, yeah, we can see that. Yep.
Yep, yep, yep. So in
I
the
just I
solution,
just
if
didn't. Yeah, I just didn't open. Okay.
yep, okay. So if you
Yeah,
just open
I
this,
saw that. I saw that, but I didn't see the perspective tab. Yep. Okay.
oh, okay, yeah. So there in the perspective of this, you can just see these details, okay. And I'm just showing you just for an example purpose. After that, now we know our actual cube on which we are working on. We will be creating one perspective, to implement the same thing. But here, just to give you a broad idea, I'm just showing you this thing because the cube which we are developing, there we are not, pulling the data from each and every fact and dimension table. Okay, so here you can just see this thing.
So it is just for this. It is sorry. It is just for decrease scope of the data which can see the developer
Yes,
or users.
yes,
All right.
yes, yes, yes. So
All right.
that's
Okay.
the only purpose. It's work in a similar way, like the way you create a view in your SQL query. So you can just very much, compare those terminology over here. Okay, so based on that,
Okay.
now
Thanks.
if I just select the data over here, that whatever I want to analyze, like for example, if I just select the data for my uh, finance or a sales summary kind of things, okay, and if I just say that I want to see the prospective sales summary, okay, then I only will be able to browse the data over here in my Excel file which is to my sales summary. So now if I just go and if I just see the details over here for my sales summary perspective, okay, then I will be able to see that in the sales summary I'm not seeing a measure, I'm not browsing any data that is related to my internet sales measure group or any of these measure groups. I'm only browsing a data that is related to my financial reporting and exchange rates. Okay, and in the dimension also I'm just viewing only the certain dimensions, that is date dimension. Okay, and certain things which are available within the date dimension and only this 3 dimensions. So now if I just go and just take a look at the cubes pivot table, I will be able to see those details over here, that in this particular pivot table now the exchange rates, sales order and sales summary is presented over here. Okay, also on the date part, on the dimension part, only the date dimension is available over here, the delivery date is available over here, the destination currency and product is available over here. So whatever basically I have selected over there, only those kind of things will be available over here. Okay, so in this particular manner, basically you can just access the perspective within your end tool like Excel or something else. Okay, now how we can create this perspective, that I'm just going to show you. Its implementation is pretty straightforward. To create a perspective, now I'm just going to our actual solution on which we are developing. Okay, so in this solution we have this kind of columns over here where we have our fact tables, whatever we have. Okay, so whatever measures we have created, that measures we have over here. Okay, we have all the dimension tables. Okay, we have all the calculation, that the calculation that we have created. Okay, apart from the calculation, if you are going to create some kind of key performance indicators using this particular KPI tabs, okay, then those key performance indicator also will be visible over here in this particular section. As of now we have not created any KPIs, so none exist over here. Okay, so whatever things which is visible to the end user, okay, all those things will be just placed over here in this particular section. Okay, after that, to create a user defined view, what you can do is you can just click on this new perspective button over here, which is besides your process sign. Okay, so once you click on this button, new perspective, okay, you will be able to see that one column is created, okay, besides the perspective. Okay, and in this column you can just do the selection, that whatever you want to display and whatever you don't want to display. Okay, so let's say I'm just giving this perspective a name as a, I'm just giving it a name as a tester. Oh, why it's working like this? Okay, I'm just giving this perspective a name as a test perspective. Okay, and here I'm just selecting a none. Okay, now here I can just do the selection on my own, that whatever data I want to display. Okay, so for example, let's say this test perspective we are only creating for the internet sales, or let's say this perspective we are only creating for our resellers. Okay, so I can just select all the measures that are related to resellers over here. So the other measures I can just deselect it. Within my fact internet sales measure also, if I want to remove some of the measure, I can just remove those measures that I don't want to display this particular measure. So those kind of selection or deselection I can just do over here in this particular window. Okay, so let's say here I have only selected this view measure. Similarly, for the dimension tables, I can just select the particular dimensions which are not related to it. Okay, so for example, this dim promotion is not related to it. Okay, this sales territory or customer is not related to it. Okay, the product is related to it, or let's say some of the dimension, let's say a dim geography is not related to it, or a destination currency is not related to it. So whatever I just don't want to display to my end user, those dimensions I can just deselect from this place. Okay, also within a dimension, if I don't want to display a particular date, like for example here I'm creating using this date, order date dimension over here. Okay, and from the date, let's say I don't want to display user certain details, like for example I don't want to display the calendar hierarchy, then I can just deselect this option over here, so the calendar hierarchy won't be visible to the end user. So in this particular manner, I can just do all my selection over here. Okay, and once I do the selection, after that what I need to do is I just need to process this cube. Okay, so once I process this cube, okay, and after that if I just go to the browser window, and there if I just try to analyze this data in Excel, okay, I will be able to see the similar option where it is just going to ask us that whether we want to retrieve a data for the entire cube, or we want to retrieve data for a certain perspective. Okay, so I'm just processing my cube, and once it processes the data, after that we will just take a look into this analyze in Excel button, and we will just look how it behaves. Okay, so I have just started that process, and it is just processing this details. Okay, so it will just take a minute or two to complete this thing, and it's just done. And now if I just go to my queue, okay, and if I just go to its browse window, okay, and in the browse window, the default measure for test was invalid. The end of input was reached. Oh, it's giving this error over here. Just give a minute. I'm just pressing it again. Oh, so let's just start building the cube again. And now it is just processing the perspective as well. Okay, last time the perspective was not processed properly as we have not deployed the cube definition. So that's a one step which I have missed. Okay, so now I'm just pressing the cube again, and once this is done, we will be able to see that option. Okay, so it's just happening over here. So just give it a minute or so. Okay, so this is done. I can just say close over here, close over here. Now if I go to the cube and if I just go to its browse window, and if I just say reconnect, the default name is invalid. Parser, the end of input was reached. Just give me a minute. Let me just see what's wrong with the perspective definition over here. What's wrong with this definition? Okay, I have not selected the default measure. So the default measure is, see, okay, okay, and I'm just selecting all the things from the factory seller seats. Okay, yeah, and now let me just save this and just push it again. So it has just initiated the process again. Each time we make any modification, we just need to process the things again and again. Okay, so that's one of the thing which is a bit awkward with SSAS queue. Here it is done, and now we should not be getting any error over here. So I'm just going to the browse window, and I'm just saying reconnect over here, and it is just connected over here. And now if I just click on the button that I want to analyze in Excel, okay, so now here you can just see that we are getting two things. Okay, the first one is our regular AdventureWorks DW 2012, okay, and the second one is this test perspective that we have created. Okay, so if I just select this test perspective, and if I just say OK over here, then you will be able to see that now in this window we are only getting the facts, okay, that are related to our factory seller, okay, and we are just getting the dimensions which we have selected. So here you cannot see the dimensions like geography or uh, other dimensions which we have not included within our selection. Okay, so in this way basically you can just create a perspective, okay, and you can just use it in your solution. Okay, so if you want to again add some new perspective within your solution, then you can just go to the perspective tab. You can just select the new perspective. Okay, again a record will be added. Okay, again a new column will be added. You can just give your perspective a name. You can just select the uh, corresponding attribute calculation, whatever you want to include. Okay, and in that way you can just perform this activity. If some particular perspective, if you don't want to include, or if you just want to remove it from your solution, you can just select that perspective, and after that you can just say use this option, delete perspective from this place, and you can just remove it from your solution as well. Okay, so this is a way in which you can use a perspective. And generally why it is used is that if you are working in a cube, or certain a cube which contain a data for a larger set of activities, like here the cube will contain a data for sales, finance, okay, HR. If the cube contain a data for all of these different areas, okay, then in that case what happen is, rather than displaying all the data to all the people, you just define the user defined view in this particular manner. Okay, so that people can select their view. Okay, and they can just work on a data accordingly. So this is all about perspective. Now anyone else has any other question on this perspective, or we are good to go ahead to next topic? Any question from anyone on the
Actually,
perspective?
based on which tool we can delimit just our users.
Generally it's useful with your, generally whenever if you are working with one tool where you are providing some kind of data models to your user, specifically with your SSRS or performance point server, or with an Excel file. In that case you can just provide them an access to a particular perspective. Okay, where they have only measures and facts and dimensions which are related to them. Okay, so they have this data model accessible to them, and based on the data model they can just create their reports on their own. So in those kind of projects you will be using this perspective functionality more heavily.
So it depends on the deployment package, or it depends on another tools
Another
when they
tool,
connect,
yeah,
or
yeah, it's depend on another tool. Like for example, if I'm giving, if let's say the business user which I have, if they are accessing the cube data using an Excel file, okay, so whenever now they are going to connect to the cube, like for example, let's say I have opened this Excel file, okay, and in this Excel file, if using this Excel file, if I'm just going to connect to the cube, so at that time what is going to happen is that if I just go to its data section, and if I just say that I want to connect to my cube, okay, I'm just selecting the selection like from analysis services. Okay, and here let's say I'm just writing my cube name as a local host. Okay, I'm just going to the next, and when I go to the next, you will be able to see that here in the top down box I have a list of all the cubes that is created on my machine. Okay, and if I select the first cube, that is an adventure works, here I can just see all the perspective that has been created within my particular cube. Okay, so if let's say I'm a person who belong to a finance department, okay, I'm a business user who belong to a finance department, okay, then I might just need a finance data, so I just select this perspective over here as a finance. I can just go to the next. Okay, and I can only retrieve a data for this particular finance department to work on within my this particular uh, Excel file. Okay, so if I just select it, and if I just say okay over here, then here I will be able to see all the data that is related to finance only. So on all this data I can just do my slicing and dicing, and I can just generate my report accordingly. Similarly, if you are providing an user, if your business user are creating reports on their own, okay, and they are using some tools like SSRS or this performance point server or something like this, okay, so there also you can just provide them a functionality where they can directly use the data model. Okay, so they can just select any of this perspective, like this finance or sales summary or something like this. So when they select this particular view or perspective, okay, they will get the list of corresponding measures, facts and dimensions and KPI associated to it. Okay, so they can just take this data based on their requirement, they can just slice and dice the data within their reports. Okay, and they can just create the reports accordingly. So in those kind of environment, this perspective things will be used very heavily. Does
actually,
it?
I beg your pardon. Yeah, I understand it. I got it. But where do you delimit your users? Where is the access from finance department is denied to the to the cube, which is perspective for example, for sellers.
Okay,
I
so
mean, it is
prospect
based on the rights, or where is the users describe it, or what?
Okay, so perspective, first of all, it's not related to any kind of security. Okay, so based on the security, you cannot distinguish the user that these are the user who should only select the sales related data, or these are the user who should relate.
So it is just for convenient,
Yeah, it
for
is just for a
convenient.
convenience. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Akshay, I had one question.
Yes.
How will we view this data in SQL Server?
How will you view the data in the SQL Server?
Yeah. Um, if you go back to SQL Server,
Okay.
um,
Okay. So in the SQL Server, basically your data is there in a particular table. So if you want to just like in your Advanced Works data warehouse, if you want to get the similar kind of selection, okay, then you might just need to create some kind of view or something over there to to just take a look at the same data. That's what I believe, because here this perspective we are just creating over here on the cube. So based on that only we are accessing the data over here.
okay. So there's no way we could view that data here.
If you want to view that data, what you need to do is you just need to take this data for an analysis purpose. Let's say you take this data to analyze in Excel, okay? And when you take this cubes data to analyze in Excel, again you will be getting the same option that what perspective you want to analyze in. Okay, so if you want to take all the data for an analysis purpose, you can just select the default perspective, that is your adventure works. Okay, and if you want a specific view only, then you can just select the particular perspective. Okay, and you will just get a data for that particular section.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yep. Sam, you have any question?
Akshay, is it kind of like just putting more kind of a dimension into it?
No, no, no. It's not a dimension. It's just a view kind of thing that we are creating within our cube. Okay. So in a SQL server, why you create a view? Like if you are dealing with a, let's say, plain database system. Okay. Like let's say if you are working with Oracle or SQL Server or something like this, then there you create a view. Okay. So what is the purpose? You can see, why you create a view over there. What is the purpose behind that?
It's the mainly the security and uh,
Ease of
mainly the
access.
security, I would say. Yeah,
uh,
ease of access as well.
ease of access, because security may not be that much over there in the view also. Okay, so it's mostly for the ease of access purpose, right? So here also it's a similar thing, that the perspective is just created over here for ease of access. Okay, so rather than viewing all the data to all the people, you are just creating a set within the data. Okay, so that if people want to see a data of a particular part only, they can just select the perspective and then you can just see the data. Okay, like I have given example that generally it will be being used, that let's say if you have created a one cube for your organization, okay, which contain a certain department, like let's say finance, sales, marketing, HR, and XYZ. Okay, so all the department may not be interested in seeing the data for other departments. Okay, so what you can do over here is you can just create the perspective over there with respect to a department. Okay, and whenever people want to see the data or they want to browse the data from a queue, okay, they can only select a particular perspective which is applicable to them. Okay, and they can just view the data accordingly. So that kind of, to just have this kind of ease of access, okay, we just go ahead with this perspective concept. Make sense?
Yes, Akshay.
Any other questions or concerns from anyone on this perspective, or we can go with the next one? Okay, so I believe everyone is fine with that. So now I'm just going with the next concept. Okay, and that next concept is a translation. Okay, So here in our SSIS cube, okay, you will be able to see one tab over here within our cube and within our dimension as well, okay, and the name of that particular tab is a translation, okay. So this translation tab is basically provide you a flexibility that if you are working with a different uh, different geography region, okay, where the language is different, okay, in that case you can just provide them the details in their local language, okay. Like for example, if there is an organization, multinational organization, okay, then that multinational organization may have offices in a English speaking region, in a French speaking region, in a Spanish speaking region, okay, or many languages are there. So there can be lots of variety, okay. And you want to provide a functionality that if, let's say, if people who are working in, let's say, South America, okay, if they access this cube, okay, then all the data will be displayed to them in a Spanish language. If a people working in a France, if they are, or certain part of Africa, if they access the cube data, then the data should be available to them in a French language, okay. If a person who belong to America, Canada, or English speaking region, okay, data will be available to them in English language, okay. So those kind of flexibility or option you may need to you may want to provide to your end user, okay. So to perform this activity, okay, there is this translations tab is available over here, okay. The prerequisite the prerequisite to use this particular tab is that we should have that particular language data into our dimension table, okay. So like, just to give you an example, here in our AdventureWorks data warehouse design, okay, what we have did is that in this AdventureWorks data warehouse, if I just go to the dimension table, like let's say a dim date, okay, and if I just select the data from this table, then here you will be able to see that in this particular dim date table, I am keeping a data in a different languages, okay. Like here you can just see that I have keep the data like English day name of the week, Spanish day name of the week, and French day name of the week, okay. So if I want my cube to support these three languages, okay, English, French, and Spanish, okay, then in my cube, in all my dimension table, I will just create this three different columns for each and every attribute where I can just keep its translation, okay. So let's say here for a day I have created this three column, okay. For a month I have created this three column, like what I call particular month in an English, in a French, and in a and in a Spanish, okay. So those kind of data first I have stored in my dimension table, okay. Similarly, if you see some of the other dimension table, like for example, if you see the data in this dim geography, then in the dim geography also you can just see that here we have created this column names like what we call a particular country in a English, in a Spanish, in a French, okay. So those kind of additional columns you can just create it over here, okay. And this information you can just provide, or this information you can just configure with your SSAS cube, okay. So your SSAS cube will understand that in which particular language it has to display data, okay, while selection, okay, and it will just display data in a particular language. So how we can perform those activity that I'm just going to show you, okay, with an example, so it will make more sense to you, okay. So now I'm just going to my particular cube, okay, and in the particular cube I'm just in this dimension tab, okay. First I will just go and perform the activity for my dimensions, and then I will just come to my cube and perform the activity over here, okay. So for this purpose what you need to do is you just need to go to each and every dimension, okay, in whatever dimensions your some kind of translation you want to apply, okay. If you do not apply a translation, then the data will be visible always in the default language, okay. So let's say for this dim date, here we are just using this attributes calendar year, quarter, date, key, and month number of the year, okay. And here we are displaying the data. If I just go to this translation tab, I will be able to see this kind of detail over here, okay. Now let's say here I want to add one more language, that is a Spanish. Okay, so whenever people will see the data, okay, they should be able to browse the data in a Spanish language format. Okay, so for that purpose what I'm doing over here is I'm just clicking on this button which says a new translation. Okay, so I'm just selecting this button, new translation, over here, and when I select this button, it will just give me the list of all the languages that is available over here. Okay, so I can just select a language from this place, like for example here I'm just selecting the languages, that's Spanish. Okay, and selecting a Spanish stream. Okay, and after that I'm just saying okay over here. So you'll be able to see that one of the language option is added over here with the name Spanish. Okay, here I can just provide a name, that what name I want to display to the end user whenever they browse the data. Okay, so like right now in the cube, whenever we are browsing a data, we are able to see this name like dim date, date key, calendar year, calendar quarter. Okay, so here we can just provide the name over here, that what name we want to represent. Okay, so let's say for a date the Spanish name is fecha. Okay, so we can just fecha. Okay, so we can just put this name over here, that in place of date we want to display the dim fecha. Okay, or for a date key, let's say we want to display a name as fecha. Okay, for a calendar year we want to display a data as a calendar year. Okay, and for year the name is enos, so we can just put the data over here as a calendar year enos. Okay, for a calendar year I can just write the data over here as a calendar, and for a quarter the name is this one, so I can just put this French tags over here, Spanish tag over here. Okay, that this is a thing I want to display. Okay, and for a month the name is mes, maybe my pronunciation is not correct. So those kind of details I can just put it over here. Okay, and now whatever detail I'm just putting it over here, this detail will be visible to you. Okay, whenever I browse my cube with the language selection as a Spanish. Okay, so I have just provided this detail over here, and I have just provided this attributes over here in this particular manner. Okay, now just give a minute. Okay, I'm just sorry, I just made one mistake. Let me just correct it, and then I will just go ahead with that. Yeah, so these are all proper ones. Okay, okay, and after that, here also if you want to provide some caption, you can just provide it. Otherwise it will just take directly default from this place. Okay, so if you want, you can just put it over here, this text, or it will just take it on your own. Like I'm just putting over here the year, quarter, month, and this. Okay, so I'm just putting it over here, so it will just take it accordingly. Okay, similar things. Now I need to just do this configuration at my this particular cube level also. So I'm just saving it over here, and after that I'm just processing the data. Okay, so I'm just processing the data from my this particular cube. Okay, for this particular dimension, and once I process this data for this dimension, then I will be able to see the tags over there within a particular language. Okay, so it is processing this data, and why it's processing the entire cube. I just by default selected the entire cube to be processed. So just give a minute. Okay, so it's processed now, and if I just go to this browse option over here within this one. Okay, by default I will be able to see that all the data is coming into the particular language as a English only. Okay, the reason behind that is that I have selected the default language. Okay, so default language will be always English, but if I just go over here and if I just select the data, okay, as a Spanish, which we have selected. Okay, so if I just select the Spanish pane over here, then I will be able to see that all the tags will become into a different one. So here the tab, you can just see over here the calendar annos, calendar miss, calendar trimester, fecha. In place of calendar hierarchy, we can just see the things accordingly. So after doing this thing, if I just go and just select the data particularly, I will be able to see the things accordingly. Like if I just select this calendar miss, that is a calendar month, I will be able to see that data in a particular language. So in this way, basically, I can just apply the translation, okay, and based on the translation, the data will be appear in the queue, okay. Similarly, within my queue, if for all the measures that I'm creating, if I just want to apply some kind of translation over here as well, okay, then in that case I can just go to the translation tab, okay, and I can just select this option, new translation, okay, and if I just, when I select this new translation option, it is just going to ask me again to select the language. So here also I can just select the language as a Spanish, okay, and once I select it, I will be able to see this list of all the objects over here. So here I can just write for some of the things, I can just write its Spanish name. Like for example, for sales amount, its corresponding Spanish is like this, okay. So I can just put it over here that in a sales amount we call this one in a Spanish, okay, or for a tax amount we call it, or for a total product cost we call it with this name in a French, okay, in a Spanish. So I can just go over here, and for total product cost I can just write like this, okay. And once now we write this name over here, and after that we are just going to process the queue. At that particular time, now we will be able to see the all the tags and every details over there within this particular Spanish language. For the places where we do not define anything, like here, let's say for some of the measures, if I do not define anything, okay, in that case I only will be able to view its data into a default language. So whatever default language you have used, like here I have used the default language in English, so you will be able to see all the tags and everything over there in this default English language. So once I do this changes, I can just save it, and after that if I just go and just process my cube again, okay, and after processing my cube again, if I'm just going to analyze this data, like I'm just processing it right now, and so I'm just processing it right now, and once I process it, I will be able to access those details. So that's I'm just doing over here. So here the processing has been started, and it will be completed in a minute or so. So it is being done, and now we can just say close over here. And after that, now if I just go to my cube and if I just go to my browse button, okay, here I can just say reconnect, refresh, okay, and I can just select my language as a, change it from default language to say a Spain, okay. And after that, now if I just go to my this measures, and in the measure, if I just go to the measure fact internet sales I'm working on, okay, in the fact internet sales you can just see that for some of the measure its name will be changed, okay, like for here the name is coming as a cantidad ventas, okay, that is for a sales amount, and cost total del producto, okay. So whatever Spanish name we have provided, okay, so that name will come over here and against this particular language. And for other one for which we have not provided any names or anything over here, okay, so they all will be appear into the default language, okay. So in this particular manner, if to your end user you want to provide details in their local language, okay, then you can just use this option translation over here, okay. Where to use this option, what you need to do is you just need to go to the translation tab of each and every dimensions and fact table, okay, and in the translation tab you just need to provide this corresponding language name, okay. Now let me just show you this picture at a broad level. So this is an AdventureWorks cube which we have, okay. So in this AdventureWorks cube you can just see that that here they have provided a detail for both this French and Spanish language. Okay, so here you can just see that you know, they are just providing the details for each and every this one. Okay, that these are the corresponding names into a particular language. Okay, so for this purpose they have just provided this detail over here, and this detail now will be accessible whenever a person browses in a particular language. Okay, so now if I just go to my adventure work cube over here within my database, okay, and if here in the browsing, if I change my language to, let's say, a Spanish one, okay, after that I will be able to see that all the cube name and everything, you will be say it's coming in a Spanish. So this fecha is a for a day dimension, so it is just coming over here in a Spanish. So all the name you can just see over here in a Spanish. Okay, and all the measures also will become over here in a Spanish. So based on your requirement, whatever you will be selecting, okay, based on that it will just come accordingly. So here we have just selected Spanish language, and all the tags and everything is coming over here in this particular language. So in this way, if you want to create a cube and if you want to give it a language mobility, then in this particular manner you can just provide it these details to your end user, and they will be able to see the data on it. Now, anyone has any question on this translation feature?
Akshay, is it gonna be only the column name which will be translated, or the data will
The
be
data
translated
as well. The data will be translated as well. So here if I just go over here, and here let's say for this, in this example, actually I have not did some of the configuration properly, but for example, let's say in this date dimension, if I just add some of the columns, like let's say I'm just adding over here the column like let's say I'm adding the column as English month name. Okay, and I'm just adding a column as a English day name of the week. Okay, and I'm just renaming this column to the name, let's say name of the day name of the week. Okay, and this English month name, I'm just renaming it to say month name. Okay, after that I can just do this translation. Okay, and in the translation I can just select over here the particular database column. So again, some month name, I can just select the column that which particular column is applicable to him. So let's say for a month name for a Spanish, the column applicable is Spanish month name, English month name, and Spanish month name. So I can just select this column over here, and I can just say okay. Okay, so it will just come over here like this. Okay, I just want to give some translated caption over here. So month means mesa and name means name. Okay, so whatever is applicable for the name in Spanish, you can just write it over here, and you can just say okay over here. Similarly, for a day name of the week, you can just go over here, and from the database you can just select the corresponding name. So let's say Spanish day name of the week. Okay, and you can just write the Spanish name over here. So I was not aware about what to call the day in Spanish. I'm just writing a Spanish day name. Okay, that is the caption I'm using, and I'm just saying okay over here. So these are the database column that I have configured over here. After that, now if I just save this, okay, and if I just process this section, so let's say I've just saved it over here, and I'm just going and just processing this particular dimension. Okay, so once I process it, then I will be able to see that I'm just getting this data from this particular columns. Okay, so by default it will just get a data from your English month name or this particular month name column name which we have configured. Okay, but if we are specifically changing it translation property, and after that you will be able to see that now if I just go to my dim date, and if I just go to my browse window, and if I just say refresh and reconnect, okay, then in that case let me just select the language as a default first. Okay, I'm just selecting the default language over here as a first. Okay, and I'm selecting the member over here as a month name. Okay, when I select the member over here as a month name and I just see the member, I will be able to see the member in the English name like April, August, December, February, January. Okay. Now if I just select the language over here as a translation one with a language, let's say Spanish. Okay. So Spanish. Okay. So here you will be able to see that now the text is coming in English. Okay, the MES name, MES name. Okay, and here the detail also you can just see that now it is getting a data. Okay, from the column which we have configured over here. Okay, so from the database we have configured this particular column over here, that is a Spanish month name. Okay, so here whatever name is relevant to its column English month name, that will just come over here and it will be visible to your end user in a particular book. So this is a way in which you can just do this configuration. Does it answer your question? Or similarly, if I just select the
Yes,
Spanish
actually.
day name, here again the day name also will be come into Spanish, like Sunday, Monday, the alternate name will come over here in this way. Okay, so in this way,
If we don't have a reference table,
then you can only specify its tags. Okay, then you maybe just put its tag name into a particular language, but its underlying data you won't be able to represent in a particular language.
okay.
Actually, so we
Akshay,
must have a, sorry. Yeah, go
that's
ahead,
fine.
please.
Yeah, just go one by one. So the yeah.
Okay, so my question was, so in the beginning you said that the prerequisite for translation is that the data should be in that particular language, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, so these months are mapped to the Spanish month name, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So the SQL server doesn't automatically translate the language, right? Say if I want to see these months in French, I need to have the data in French, right?
Mm-hmm. For a certain dimensions you can do those things. Okay, so for a certain dimensions like date you can do those things. Okay, to certain extent for a geography you can do those things, but for other dimensions those translation will be difficult. So that's why what generally people follow a habit is that they can just they add this kind of additional columns within their database tables. Okay, like we have over here, and from this table only they prefer to have this value. Otherwise what you can do is, other option is that if you are providing your reports into some web application or somewhere, okay, that you can automatically convert the language, right? So those kind of things you can always do, but the preferred approach is to have this kind of column selections and then to perform this activity.
Okay, so it's always preferred to have the data in that particular language and map that data, right?
Yes,
Instead of doing it automatically.
yes,
So
yes.
can you go back to that screen
Uh,
that
with the,
shows the levels?
okay,
Yeah. So when you click another language from that
okay,
language drop-down list, what
okay.
happens?
Let's say, let me just select some languages more generic. So let me just select French language over here, because, or a German language over here. Okay. So when I select it, it is just going to show me the default language one. So it is just going to,
Oh, okay.
whatever is the default language, in that language it will just show me the details. So if I just select the Hindi, India, or Japanese, Japan, it will just show me the default language. So what it will do basically is that here, whenever you have created the cube, okay, in the cube you are selecting this particular column, okay. So here we have fetched the English month name column, okay, and that English month name column we have renamed it to the month name, right? So basically the data will always be displayed for this English month name, okay, and if you want to use some other language, then basically you just need to override that data. So that overwriting option you are just providing over here in this translation tab. Does,
Okay.
does it make sense?
Okay, so it defaults to English
Yeah. So
and you
default to,
just
yeah, it's default to whatever language you are just putting it, whatever column you are putting it over here. Okay. So for example, let's say if I'm developing my solution for a French company, okay, and there I just want to provide a functionality that if the English user, okay, if they want to see the data, they can just change their language and they can just see it. Okay. So if that is the case, in that case, what I can do is the default member I can just select over here as a in French month name. Okay, so this French month name is my default member. Okay, so in this way, okay, the data will be always visible in this French month name only. Okay, and now let's say if I want to, if I just go to its translation, then against this French month name I can just put some column mapping. So let's say my against my French month name I'm just putting a column mapping over here as an English name. Okay, so that I'm just putting over here as an English name. Okay, and I'm just saying okay over here. So now by default, whenever user will select this attribute, okay, he will be able to see the data in the language, whatever language data is there in this particular column. Now if I just go over here and if I just say I just want to process the cube, okay, then the data will be visible over here in this particular language. Okay, but now just give me a minute, it's just processing, so I will just show you the actual results so it will make more sense to you. What is then the concept which I will be speaking. So just give me a minute. Okay, so here after processing the cube, if I just go to the dimension, if I just go to its browser, okay, and if I just say language, I just let me just first reconnect and refresh it. Okay, and now if I just go and just select the default language over here, okay, you will be able to see all those details. Here from the hierarchy, I'm just selecting the label as a French month name. Okay, so by default I will be able to see the data in the French. Okay, so here you can just see that all the month name, although I have selected the language as a default, okay, again it's coming into a French. Okay, so the basic assumption is that our default language is English. Okay, so that's why we are selecting also whenever we are creating a dimensions. Okay, at that particular time we are only selecting a columns which contain the English data. Okay, and on the top of that, in the translation we are specifying that whenever a person select a Spanish language, okay, then just override this data which with the data that exists in this particular column. Okay, so those kind of overwriting functionality you are just providing over here. Okay, so here let's say for this French data in the Spanish language, what we have selected is that we want to overwrite it with the data that is present in our this particular language, in the English language. Okay, so when I just overwrite this data, now I will be able to see the data in the English language. Okay, so this is just a mechanism to translate the data. Okay, and just to provide an option that whenever user if select this particular language over here as a Spanish, at that time just override the data, override the actual language data with the data that is mapped over here. So that is the only thing which we are doing over here. Your SQL server internally do not doing any kind of a language conversion or something like that.
Okay, I get that part, but just now when you selected Spanish, why did it display in English? Because our default was French, right?
Yeah, the default was French, and we have mapped its translation to which particular column? This column, right? And what is the name of the column? English month name. So that's why it was just showing in English. Make sense?
Yeah, so it displays English only when you select English, right?
Yes, yes.
And previously you said if you select any other language other than English, it should display in the default language.
Default
and the default language is French, right?
French, yeah. So then it will
yeah.
just
So now
French.
when you selected Spanish, it is displaying still in English. It's not displaying in French.
Yes, yes. So now if I just select any other language, that will be its default language. Okay. So let's say if I just select this language Telugu India, okay, then you will be able to see that it's coming in a French language, which is its default language. Because for a Telugu India, we have not provided any mapping over here in the translation. So if, let's say if I in my database I had one more column which contain a data into a Telugu language, okay, then I can just add one more language over here, new translation, okay, and I can just select the language over here from this place. So I will just select the Telugu India, and then I will just provide its corresponding data mapping from my database. So once I do this activity, after that whenever user select that language, he will be able to see the data into a concerned language. So in that way you can just provide the mapping, and you can just provide the data conversion, like the language conversion.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Got it.
but by default whatever you are presenting over here, that will just come. Okay, so by default these are the column names, and then in a translation you are just overwriting it against a particular selection.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Any other question from anyone on the translation tab?
Actually,
Yes.
does it mean that users for which this all this job done, I mean the design, all the functions, we construct these cubes, and users who are interested in this kind of work, they are using the same interface?
Uh, yeah, they may or may not be using the same interface, but while browsing the data from a cube, okay, you can just specify this thing that in which particular language you want to browse the data. Okay, so at that time, if you specify that you want to browse the data from your cube, okay, with a Spanish language, okay, or you can just configure the option that whatever default configuration is there on a person machine, okay, he will be able to see the data in a similar language. Okay, so if a person who sit in France, okay, and on his machine he has a default configuration to display everything in the French, okay, so that information will come to your query, okay, whenever he will fire some data on your queue, okay, like whenever he requests something on your queue, okay, so your queue will just respond accordingly. So those kind of configuration you can just do that whenever you are firing a query on your SSAS queue. At that time you will specify that which particular language you are using. By default, like it will just use a default language if you do not specify anything, which is a general case. Make sense? Or it's good, or it confuse you more?
No, yes, thanks. Yeah,
Yep. Okay.
got it.
Okay. Okay, so that's a way you can just perform these language translations, okay, within your cube, and these are the prerequisite for that you need to have a columns and everything in place. If you want to look more into this, and if you want to see more configurations related to this, then what I can recommend is you can just go to this AdventureWorks data warehouse, okay, and in this AdventureWorks data warehouse you will be able to see that for each and every dimensions, okay, they are displaying majority of the attributes of the dimension table. So you can just see over here, like for this dim date, they have just provided the name for each and every column, like this French and Spanish name. Okay, they have configured the like for a day name, they have configured this. Okay, this particular database columns. Okay, so those configuration they have did for each and every dimension. For the cube also, if I just go to its translation tab, then I will be able to see that for each and every measure they have written its French and Spanish name. Okay, so whenever if person select a language as a French or Spanish, he will be able to view the measures name into the corresponding language. Okay, so if you want, you can just take a look at these things. Okay, and you can just create or browse it accordingly, so you understand it in a more better way. Okay, so this is all about translation. Now here I'm just taking a break of around 2-3 minutes. Okay, and after the break we will be looking into the partition tab. Okay, where in the partition tab I will just explain you the concept of partition, and after that we will be just looking into storage modes. Okay, so here I'm just taking a break of around 4-5 minutes, and then we will just look into the next one. Yeah. So hello everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah. So we'll just go to our next topic. That is a partition. Okay. So in an SSAS, the one concept like the partition related concepts are available. Okay. And this concept is, some way similar to the concept which we have in our SQL Server database. Okay. So would you like to make any comment that why we have a partition in a SQL Server and what is an advantage we will get on the database engine if we have a partitions over there? Would anyone would like to make any comment on that part? That why we have these things over there? So in the database, generally we have a partitions for a larger tables, okay, and we created primarily for a performance perspective, like to improve a table performance and query performance. We create a partitions over there, okay. Here in an SSAS also similar kind of concept is available over here, where what people generally do is for a larger facts, okay, or for a larger data tables that they have, okay, generally it's applicable for a fact tables only because the fact table have a large amount of data. So based on a certain condition, uh, they will just divide the fact table into a certain partition. Okay, so what advantage it will give you is, the first advantage it will give you is definitely you can improve your query performance. Okay, second advantage it will give you is that if you are creating a multiple partition in your fact table, okay, then you can just specify that which is a particular partition that you want to process. Okay, so for example, let's say for in your queue for a certain fact table, like for example, let's say your sales table, okay, or your internet sales table, okay, you have a data for let's say 2001 to 2014. Okay, so you have a data in this large range. So for last 14 years of data you will be having into your table. Okay, now let's say from this data, whatever data you have till 2012, okay, that is a kind of data which is a stable one. Okay, so that is the data for which never anything is going to change. Whatever data it is, okay, it is just going to be as it is. And post that whatever data is come, let's say a data for your 2013 and 2014, okay, that is the data you think that where some modifications can happen. Okay, so if you have a data in your queue in this kind of scenarios, okay, then what you can do is you can just create a certain partition within your queue. Okay, like let's say in this case you are creating a two partition within your queue, when one partition will contain a data from 2001 to 2012, okay, and another partition will contain a data where you have a data after 2013 onwards, which is a kind of data still kind of getting stabilized. Okay, now once you create this kind of partition within your queue, after that what you can say that whenever first time you are doing your data load in the SSAS queue, okay, at that particular time you process both this partition. So you process the data from 2001 to 2012, and you process the data in for 2013 and onwards period as well. Okay, but after that when you are running your daily loads, okay, in that load using a XML query language, you can specifically tell your queue that do not process the data that is before 2012, okay, but only process the data that is present in this particular partition. Okay, so once you have this kind of partition, and if you define this kind of rules within your SSAS queue that says that only process the data in the second partition, okay, where you have a data up to 2013. Okay, so here what you are doing is, while giving this kind of indication to your SSAS queue, you are saving a lots of processing time. Okay, because now on a daily basis you are not going to process the data for the last 14 years, but you are just going to process the data for last 2 years with the current data. Okay, so those kind of performance improvements you will get while processing your cube's data if you have this kind of partition defined within your SSAS queue. Okay. The third advantage you will get over here is that if you have did a parallel processing kind of settings within your cube, okay, then uh, you then within that parallel processing you can just say your parallel processor, each of your parallel processor, to process a certain section of the queue. Like for example, let's say if you have a two parallel processor, then you can just say that my processor 1 is going to process the data from 2001 to 2012, and my processor 2 is going to process the data for 2013 and onwards. So in that way, you are just distributing your processing task, okay, and you are just improving their performance there as well, okay. So these are the certain ways in which you can get a lots of performance improvement if you are defining the partitions within your queue, okay. But the most effective way I like to define a partition is just to provide the information, just to save your queue processing time, okay. That here if you define the partition in this way, then you can just say that always process the second partition, and if you are saving a lots of processing time that is required to process the data from your 2001 to 2012, okay. So these are some of the primary reasons for which the partition is being used and it is being defined within an SSAS queue for larger tables. Does it make sense? Anyone has any question on this theoretical concept of partition, which I have just explained? Its implementation is pretty straightforward, so it will be completed within 1 or 2 minutes, but the concept should be clear to everyone.
Akshay,
Akshay,
is it,
that's
go ahead.
fine. Akshay, what's the difference between partition and a perspective?
Okay, so perspective is just your user defined view. So in a perspective, everything is being processed. Your perspective do not say that process only a data of a certain timeline or only process a data of a certain section. Your data will be processed, all data will be processed, and from that data you are only selecting a certain data, whatever you want to display to your user. Okay. While in the partitions, what is going to happen is you are creating the partitions within your table. Okay. Like let's say if your table contain data for 2001 to 2014, then here you are saying that whatever data you have before 2013, okay, you have created a partition for that, and you can just define a certain rules over there that whether you want to process that data or you do not want to process that data. Okay. So that is a major difference. Does it
So
make
you're
sense?
basically splitting the tables, right?
Yeah, so it is a similar partition concept which we generally use in our database also, that where we just divide the table into a certain category based on the year or geography or something like this.
And then you can create perspectives for each of these partitions, right?
Uh, Perspective, you are just getting confused over here. Your perspective is just a view. So your perspective is, not relevant to whatever kind of partitions you are creating. Your perspective will just fetch a certain attribute. So in your perspective, you are just defining that what attributes you want to fetch. Okay. And in your
Okay.
cube you are defining that uh, what partitions you want to bring. So okay, so just to give you an example, like let's say if you're talking to a kid, okay, and if you're telling to the kid that these are the 5 kind of ice cream I can get you, okay, so in that process you are going to get the 5 different ice cream, okay. So that is what you are processing your cube, and at that way you can just define the order that whether you want to bring all the 5 ice cream together or you want to break up into some way, like first you will bring 3 ice cream and then you bring a 2 ice cream, okay. So that's a kind of process where you are defining a partitions, okay, and you are just partitioning the process to bring the things, okay. But if your kid is, you are giving him an option that you can just select either a strawberry ice cream or this ice cream or vanilla ice cream, then that's you are giving him a perspective that only select any one of them, okay. And whatever he is selecting, that you are giving it, but at that time you have all the five ice cream in a reserve. So those are kind of difference, you can just do it over here.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other
Akshay,
question?
here only
Yes.
we are we are dividing the fact table only, or is it the
Yeah.
dimension tables as well
Generally,
will
it's
be
for a generally,
partition?
yeah. Generally, it is for a large amount of like the table which has a good amount of quantity those uh, for those attributes only. This kind of partitions is being used. Okay. So in majority of the cases, it will be only for fact tables only. I've never seen practically implemented it for a dimension tables. Or I'm not sure whether we can use these options as well within an SSIS to partition our data in the dimensions table as well. So I just need to look into that. Does it answer your question?
Yes, Akshay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question on this partition, that why we create a partition? Is it clear to everyone that why we need a partition or why we create a partition or how it is going to save your cube processing time? Is everyone able to get that thing? Or any question on that line from anyone? Okay, so I believe everyone is fine with that. Okay, so once you find out that you know that one of the table will contain the large amount of data. Okay, then for that table you will just identify that what kind of data it contains. Okay, and what are the data is changing very rapidly. Okay, so generally the partitions in majority of the cases will be created on the date related stuff only. Okay, because partition generally created on the transactions data. Okay, and your transaction data will be always related to a dates. Okay, like your transactions happening on a certain dates and you are just storing it into your database tables. So in most of the cases it will be related to your dates only. Okay, so like this particular partition, like for this particular queue. Okay, here in the partition sections you can just see the name of each and every fact table that we are having within our queue. Okay, and by default each and every table will have a one partition, that is a default partition in which it contain all the data. Okay, now here you need to define, here you need to just say that in a particular partition just only bring a certain amount of data and do not bring all data. Okay, so let's say for this fact internet sales table, over here let me just select the data from this table. So fact internet sales over here and I'm just selecting a data. Okay, so here I can just see that here I have lots of data. Okay, and I have some of the date key also over here, like this order date key. So I'm just going to use this order date key to give you an example. Okay, I'm just selecting all the data from this table. So here what by default what our cube is doing is it is just having a one partition, and in the one partition it is just selecting all the data from this table. Okay, and it is just using that data, sorry, it is just using the data within a partition. Okay, now what we are going to do over here is we are just going to write a where clause over here, and we are just going to say that create a one partition, and in that partition just process the data only that is before your 2006. So from this table if I just select distinct year. Okay, so if I just select the distinct year of the column, uh, say some of the column that contains the date over here. Yeah, so we have a column name order date. So I'm just writing this order date column over here. Okay, and if I just write it over here and if I just select the distinct date from this table, then I will be able to see that this table will contain a data for a year 2007, 8, 6 and 5. So this table will basically contain data from 2005 to 2008. Okay, now let's say I want to create a partition for each and every year. Okay, so I want to create a partition where I have a data for 2000, where I have a data before 2005, before 2006, where I have a data for 2006, where I have a data for 2007, and where I have a data after 2007. Okay, uh, or after 2008. So let's say these are the four partitions which I want to create. Okay, where in each partition I have a data for 1 year. Okay, so let's say first partition I'm creating where I'm just going to have a data where my order date key is between 2006 0101 and between this and 2006 1231. Okay, so on this basis I can just select the data. Okay, so if I just want to select this kind of partition, then I can just go to my this SSAS cube. Okay, here I can just select this default partition. Okay, and I can just right click on it, and I can just okay, just give me a minute. Where is this? Where can I just do these things? Yeah, so here I can just do these things. So here in the source query I can just change this detail. So I'm just going to the source section, and I'm just clicking on this button. So here I can just get this kind of window where it's just saying that the partitions of source back internet sales. Okay, here I can just change its binding type to a query binding. Okay, and when I change it to a query binding, I will be able to see the data query, which looks something like this, where in this query it is just selecting a data from this table. Okay, here in the where clause I can just write this condition that select the data from this table where my dbo.order date key is between this particular two dates. Okay, so here I can just write a conditions over here. So if I write this condition, then what is going to happen is that it is just going to syntax could not be prepared, incorrect syntax here between this. Okay, just give a minute. Yeah, so here I can just write a query like this. So when I write this query, it is just going to fetch data now from this particular table where my order date key is between 2006-0101 and 2006-1231. Okay, but I have a data for 2005 as well, so I'm just keeping it as a 2005-0101 and 2005-1231. Okay, and I can just say OK over here. So now this my one partition is created which contain a data for a 2005 only, and I'm just giving this a name as a 2005. Okay, after that I can just click on the button new partition over here. Okay, and when I click on the new partition, it is again going to show me the same kind of window. Okay, and here I can just go to the next, where in the next I can just select my table from my data source view. Okay, when I go to the next, here I can just use this option to specify a query to restrict my rows. Okay, and here I can again just write the same query that I want to where in the where clause I just can write over here, where in the where clause I can just define that just select the data from this table, where in this case now my order date key should be between 2006 and 2006 1231. So this will be my data for 2006, and I can just go next. Okay, and just give a minute. Specify a query to restrict the row. Next, I just give this option. Okay, doing next. Okay, and here I'm just selecting the option design aggregations later. Okay, these aggregations are related to the aggregation tab which is available over here. Okay, so this I will just explain in my next session, so it will make more sense to you at that time. So here let's say I'm just getting the data from a 2006, so I'm just giving this partition a name as a 2006 over here, and I'm just saying finish over here. So this one partition more I have created. Similarly, I'm creating a two more partition, so I'm just again selecting a data for this fact internet sales, and I'm just again moving next. I'm specifying a query over here, and this time I'm just going to specify my year as 2007. Okay, over here like this. I'm moving next, giving a name as 2007. Okay, selecting the option design aggregation later. Okay, and I'm just saying finish over here, and one more partition I'm creating which contain my data after 2008. So I'm just going again next on this window, selecting the fact internet sales over here. Okay, I'm just moving next over here, where I'm specifying a query. Okay, so I'm just putting this query over here, and this time I'm just writing that where my order date key is greater than and equal to 2008 0101. Okay, so this is a fourth partition I have created. Okay, and after that I can just say next over here, next over here, and I can just choose the option design aggregation later, and I can just say post 2008. Okay, and our name I can give, and I can just say finish over here. Now you can just see that here with this task, okay, what I have did is I have just created the four partition within my cube, okay, and once I create this partitions in my cube, after that what I can do is now I can just tell my cube that I only want to select or process a particular partition only, and I don't want to process the entire cube. Okay, so before I go into that, let me just show you how we can process the cube outside our this Visual Studio environment. Okay, so if I just go to this database, in this database I have deployed my cube over here. Okay, so this is our cube, my first cube 2014-09. Okay, in this cube we have this cube over here. Okay, and under the cube we have this measure groups over here like fact, currency, internet sales and everything. Okay, under the fact internet sales we have one partition defined over here, that is a fact internet sales. There is a default partition which will be there for each and every measure group. Okay, and this partition is just going to be processed whenever we are going to process our cube. Okay, now after creating the four partitions, if I just deploy this cube over here, okay, and if I process it, you will be able to see that in this partition section there will be a four particular partitions will be created over here with whatever name we have given. Okay, now whenever we process our cube, at that time what happen is or how we process our cube is that to process our cube we just right click up, or we can right click on our this cube database, like let's say my first cube 2014-09. Okay, and when I right click on it, I will get one of the option over here as a process. Okay, so when I just select on this process option, I will be getting one pop-up window. Okay, it is just coming up, so just give it a minute. So this pop-up window will look something like this. Okay, in this pop-up window you can just select the processing option from this place, that how you want to process your cube. Okay, whether you want to process it full or whatever way you want to process. Okay, so here if you just say on OK, it is just going to start processing your cube. Okay, so when you say you're processing your cube, it will just connect to your database, it will just fetch a data from your database, and it will just process the data accordingly. Okay, similarly if you want to do it in some other way, okay, then in that case what you can do is, here there is one option available over here as a script. Okay, so if you just click on the script option that is available over here, then you will be able to see that within your SQL window you will be able to get one query window open over here. Okay, and this query window is your XML query language. Okay, this is an XML based query language. Okay, and here you can just see that here some XML tags is written over here. So if this tag you will fire, okay, across against a particular cube, okay, then your cube will again process, because this is basically a script to process your cube. Okay, so this is a script using which you can process your entire cube. Okay, similarly if you want to process a certain section of the cube, okay, like for example if you only want to process a certain section of the cube, okay, in that case what you can do is you can just select a certain section, okay, and you can just select the process for that section as well. Okay, so if I come over here and if I just say I want to process this cube section, this fact internet sales, then here you can just see that here the option is coming over here to only process this partition. Okay, and if I just go and generate the script for this partition, then again in the second window I will be able to see the script over here which is saying over here that I just want to process this particular partition. Okay, so once you whenever you load a data into your warehouse environment, after that rather than processing your entire cube, okay, what you can do is you can just prepare this kind of XML script, okay, which says that you only want to process certain partitions within your cube, okay, or certain sections within your cube. So with this kind of script generation, okay, you can fire this kind of script now to this particular SSAS cube, okay, and once you fire this script over here, only this particular section will be processed over here, okay. So generally what people do is they create this kind of partitions, okay, like we have created this 4 partition over here. They deploy these partitions, okay. So once we deploy this partition over here, we will be able to see the 4 partition sections over here, okay. After that, if you feel that whatever data you have for your current year, that data is only going to change and the previous data is going to remain as it is, okay. So in that case, what you can do is you can prepare this kind of XML script, okay, and once your data warehouse data load is done, after that you only run this particular script to process a certain partition of your cube only, okay. So let's say we have created this partition over here, okay, and now if I just process this partition, okay, you will be able to see that once this partition is partition is processed, after that in your database you will be able to see these 4 partitions over here, okay. So initially whenever you are doing it for a first time, okay, you are just going to do it as a process full, okay. So I'm just initially doing this, okay, sorry, I just selected a 1 partition over here as a sales post, so that is only processed, okay. So just give a minute and let me just process the entire cube only, so it will make more sense to you, the explanation. I'm just processing it over here, and it is just running and will be completed in a certain way. So here also you can just see that for this fact internet sales, if I just do it, you can just see all the partition name over here, that it is just processing all this partition, okay. Now once this is done, I'll just show you the definitions and everything within your cube, okay. So just give me a minute and it will be more clear to you once this process is done. Yeah, so it is done, and now my cube definition is deployed and processed over there, okay. So whenever I do this deployment first time, then after the first deployment I will be able to see that if I just refresh this database, and I will be able to see that under this measure group fact internet sales, now I have this 4 partitions over here that I have created, okay. So whenever you are going to process your cube for the first time, or whenever you are just processing it for the first time, at that time you are going to process your entire cube, okay. But once your cube is processed, okay, and if you think that the data that exists in a partition 2005, 6 and 7, okay, it is never going to change, and the data only for partition 2008 can change, okay. In that case, what you can do is you can just generate the script for that partition, okay, processing script for that partition. So here you are right clicking on it and you can just say process, okay, and you can just generate a script for that I just need a script to process this partition. So you will get this kind of script over here, okay. So rather than processing your entire cube, you can generate this kind of script for each and every measure group and dimensions you have, okay, and you can only choose to process this particular dimensions and fact only from this place, okay. So if you do this thing, then what is going to happen is, then whenever you process your cube, this data for 2005 to 2007 is never going to process. It will just keep as it is, like whatever state that data is, okay, and only the data for the year 2008 and after that is going to be processed. So that will save lots of your processing time, you know, whenever you are just doing a database, your cube refresh or something like this, okay. So at that time you will just get advantage over here. Also within a partition, definitely at the query execution time also you will be getting a performance improvement, because now your cube will know that in which particular partition a data for which particular year exists. Okay, so those kind of query performance improvement while firing an MDX query also you will get if you have this kind of partitions over here in place. So now is it clear to everyone that how we define a partition, what advantage we can get from a partition, okay, and how we are going to process the individual partition? Is it clear to everyone? Anyone has any question on it? Or if you are not getting it at all, then also please let me know. So I will just explain you with some other examples.
Akshay, can you show us how you will process the individual partition
Yeah.
with an
So,
example?
okay. So for this one, what you can do is like, for example, let's say if you remember in an SSIS sessions, I was explaining you about one of the tasks, okay, and that task is analysis services DDL task. Okay, so this kind of command you can just fire it over there. Okay, so let's say here I have this command. Let me just open any SSIS package. So we are working in this MSPI. Let's say I open any of the package. So I'm just opening this package. First, I look up over here, and I'm just copying the script. So just give me a minute. Just being open up. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So okay. So I'm just deleting this. I'm deleting this as well, so I don't have an issue. Okay. Yeah. So in the SSIS, if you remember, at the time of I was taking a session on it, I have explained you that in an SSIS we have some of the tasks available over here, and one of the tasks is this analysis services execute detail task. Okay, so using this execute DDL task, you can just specify that what partition you want to process. So here you can just go to this particular task, okay, and you can just do the configuration. So let's say here you are first creating a connection. So I'm just let's say creating one connection over here, and this connection I'm just pointing out to my queue. Okay, so I'm just editing this connection, and I'm just selecting my cubes and everything accordingly. So here is the cube. I want to use this one only. Okay, and in the initial catalog I'm just selecting my this particular cube. Okay, so let's say I want to fire the query against this cube. I can just test the connection, and I can just say okay over here. So now my connection will be created, that is just going to fire a query against this queue. Now here I want to provide the query as a direct input only. Okay, and here in the source direct I can just copy paste this XML script, okay, which is just being generated. So I can just write the script over here, and then I can just say okay and okay over here. So now my configuration of this analysis services task is done. Okay, and now if I just go over here and if I just run this package, what is going to happen is whenever this package is going to execute, it is just going to process my data, okay, for that particular partition only. Okay, so generally what people do is if they are working on a Microsoft BI platform, okay, in that case what they generally do is they will first populate all their data into the dimension tables using the SSIS backend jobs, and after that they will write one more SSIS package, okay, which contain this analysis services execute DDL task and task like this. Okay, and using this task they will just process the particular dimensions or particular fact table partitions, okay, in which they think the data impact is going to be done. Okay, so using this kind of scripts and using this kind of components within an SSIS package, you can just perform this kind of activity. Now it make more sense to all of you, or it's still confusing that how the partition works? Any question from anyone on this? Any question from anyone on this one?
So Akshay, over here we put only the XML file to run the analysis services execute DDL task, right?
Yes. So in this particular analysis executive task, we just prepared this kind of statement. Okay, just make the XML statement that is required to process the certain section of the queue. Okay, and you can just specify over here, and based on that only that particular partitions or that particular dimensions will be processed. Okay, so let's say in your cube, if you are expecting that the data is only going to change for a dimension employee, reseller, and geography, and this particular factory internet sales partition, then you can just prepare this kind of XML script for each and every dimensions and each and every fact table. Okay, fact tables partitions. Okay, and you can just say that I only want to synchronize this particular dimensions or fact table only, or this particular partitions only. So it will just save lots of your processing time, because every day if you process all the dimensions and all the fact tables, okay, and if your cube size is very large, then it will take a good amount of time. Like, just to give you one practical example, I was working in one of the project where every day around 200,000 records come into their transaction table. Okay, so every day 200,000 record into the transaction table is a huge amount of data they are getting on a daily basis. Okay, and their cube will and their existing queue had very large amount of data within its fact table. Okay, because they have a last 6-7 years analytical data. Okay, so now if you have those kind of data in place, okay, and if you are processing your cube on a, let's say, on a daily basis, then in that case, for that particular project, whenever they process the cube will used to take around 7 to 8 hours just to complete its process. Okay, or just to refresh the data within a queue. Okay, so if your cube is taking a that long time, or if it is processing a that much amount of data, okay, and it is going to take a longer amount of time to process, so in that case you cannot afford to process the entire data on a daily basis. Okay, so in that scenario what people do is, whatever data is their stable data, okay, that stable data they will keep as it is. Okay, so they do not process it again and again. Whatever the new data is coming, only that data they will process by using this concept of partitions or something like this. Does it make sense now?
Yes, Akshay. Thank you.
Okay.
So Akshay, adding to your point, so how do you process the partition within the queue? So
Okay.
on SQL Server, you can just right click on that individual partition and process, right? But
And
how do you do it on
okay,
Visual Studio?
so on the Visual Studio also, like if let's say if you have created a cube over here, and in this particular cube solution which we are creating, if here also if you want to process it, okay, then you can just select a particular partition over here. So let's say if I just select this partition over here as a, let's say 2007, okay, and if I just say process over here now, then you will just see that it is not going to process the entire partition, not the entire this one, but you can just see the text over here that just give a minute, the text might come in a minute or so. Just give it a minute. Yeah, here you can just say that it has not selected all the partition. It has only selected the partition fact internet sales 2007, and then it's just to process. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So in this way, you can just create a partition and you can just use it accordingly. Okay. Now the next topic is its storage mode. That by default you can just see the storage modes over here as a MOLAP. Okay. But we can just change this storage mode, and we can just apply a different storage mode to the different partitions based on the business requirement. Okay, so what are these different storage options? Okay, that I'm just going to explain in the next session. Just for your curiosity, these are the different storage mode that's available into SSAS Cube: ROLAP, HOLAP, and these are the some variation of the MOLAP. Okay, so these are the different options available over here. So what are these options, and how they differ from one to another? Okay, that I'm just going to explain in the next session. Okay, and after that, if we get a time, then I will just go into this actions tab. Okay, and the aggregation tab into our next session as well. Okay, so that's all from my side in today's session. Now, anyone has any difficulty to understand any of the three concepts which I have explained today, perspective, translation, or this partition, then please go ahead and ask a question.